San Francisco Dons head coach Chris Gerlufsen joins the show today to discuss USF's excellent transfer portal class and how conference realignment is impacting the WCC on today's episode of Locked On College Basketball.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Andy Patton. I want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or your first watch every day. Shout out to those everyday listeners. If you want to become an everyday listener, just go to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on all available podcast platforms. We've got a fantastic show for you all today, joined by Chris Gerlufsen, the head coach of the San Francisco Dons, in a variety of topics all about USF's transfer portal success, navigating the transfer portal in this new era, the WCC, the success of all the coaches there, and of course, some talk about conference realignment and NIL as well. Enjoy. Folks, thrilled to be joined today by Chris Gerlufsen, the head coach of the San Francisco Dons, coming off a 20-14 season after replacing Todd Golden last year. Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on with us.
Thanks for having me on, Andy.
Well, I wanted to start by talking about what has been a very successful transfer portal class here for San Francisco. We've seen 5 guys coming in, and look, it's never easy to replace somebody like Khalil Shabazz, obviously an extraordinary talent for the last half decade or so at San Francisco. Zane Meeks, he moves on to Arizona State, another tough player to lose, but we're talking about 5 really talented players coming in from a variety of different places. Mongolian Mike from Dayton, obviously top 100 prospect there. And I kind of want to start with him, Coach, and just kind of talk about a player who had a lot of options in the portal, was connected to a lot of high major programs, ultimately ends up coming out to San Francisco. What was it about USF that really appealed to him? And what do you feel like you guys are getting with Mike coming in?
Yeah, he was definitely an interesting recruit for us to land, and one that we spent a lot of time on, trying to build a relationship very quickly. Obviously, with him going through the draft process, there was still some questions of whether he was going to return to school or stay in the draft. So we're lucky to have him. I think San Francisco is number one, is a city that, he'll feel very, very comfortable in with our Mongolian influence here. But from an opportunity to play and impact our program, we're losing a lot of production in Khalil and Ty Roberts. And I think on paper, he looked at it and thought that this can be a place that, he can continue to expand his game and hopefully put him in a position to be a draft pick here in the next few years. So we're really excited about him. I think he has really good positional size and a really high level IQ and feel for the game, which, lends itself to how we play. So we're excited. He's not here yet. He gets here later this week. So we're looking forward to him getting on campus.
The 6'8" is what he's listed as a point guard as well. I mean, you look over at, even somebody like Gonzaga in the WCC, their power forward, Anton Watson's about 6'8". So what does it mean for you to have somebody with that kind of size playing the 1 or the 2 or wherever he's going to end up kind of situating for this program?
Yeah, no, I think it's unique, and kind of our goal when we dove into the portal and dove into our recruiting class in general, because I do think we have 2 really good high school players joining our program as well. But we wanted to increase our overall positional size, and I think we've addressed that, and it'll lend us a lot of versatility on both sides of the ball. And I'm really excited about that and kind of the things that we can do kind of moving forward.
And then you got another top 100 prospect coming in, or former top 100 prospect in Malik Thomas coming over from USC. Obviously, the Trojans made it pretty clear that they have some other options for the guard room next year with Bronny James coming in. Of course, Isaiah Collier, one of the top player in that class for next season. So Malik Thomas hits the portal, ends up staying in the state, comes to San Francisco, a guy that we didn't see a ton of at USC. But what was it about him that appealed to you, and kind of how do you see his role playing out for the Dons next season?
Yeah, for Malik, I think, unfortunately for him, he got kind of in a numbers game at USC and got caught behind some pros, I think he's going to come in with a tremendous chip on his shoulder. I think he had a good experience at USC, just did not get, the opportunity to play as much as he would like. And he's a guy who can really score the ball. I think he's wired to score. And so I'm excited to try to get him up to speed, in our offense. And I think he'll be a guy who can maybe take on some of that production that we're losing. So another big guard, 6'4", 210 pounds. And I think he'll be a little bit different look than what we've had in the past.
Well, that's perfectly what I was about to get into, because you look at the guards of the past. You looked at Roberts and you look at Shabazz and even Bouye. Like they weren't big guards. Like that was one of the things that will hurt those guys from an NBA perspective as well. But now you have a rotation that is going to be a lot bigger. How is that going to be an impact in the WCC, where you kind of see a lot of teams that tend to not have a lot of size in the guard room?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm excited about it. As I said, earlier, I think, especially from a defensive standpoint, it'll lend us some more versatility, whether it's having the opportunity to switch a little bit more than what we've done in the past. I think we have some guys in the backcourt now that will be able to post up, which will be a little bit different as well. I do like having a smaller, quicker kind of change up, and we do have that in Ryan Beasley, one of our freshmen, who I'm really, really excited about. He's been really impressive since being here on campus. But I think, again, as you said, just our overall body of work, our overall size component is just a lot bigger than what we've been, in the past.
Then you make some additions to the front court as well. You got Jonathan Mogbo coming in from Missouri State, from the Missouri Valley Conference. Another guy who had some high level production in a very solid basketball conference, 8-7 last year. What about him kind of appealed to you, and how do you think he's going to be utilized for your program next year?
Yeah, the first thing that attracted us to him was what he was going to bring on the defensive side of the ball. He's a guy where I think Missouri State was a top 50 team defensively last year when he was on the floor, and dipped to like 225 or something when he was out of the game. So he's a guy who I think can really defend his position. He can defend multiple positions. He's kind of a quick twitch, run and jump athlete, and he'll be, again, a different kind of look of what we've had here. But I've been really surprised and pleased with where he is offensively. He did not have the opportunity to do a whole lot on that end at Missouri State. And since getting him, I've been really impressed with just his overall feel, his ability to pass for a big guy. And I think he's going to have a really kind of steep incline in terms of what his production can be for us here. So we're really excited about Jonathan.
So last question on the portal stuff, Coach. 5 guys coming in this year. It seems like obviously some guys who have a lot of pedigree out of high school, guys who had a lot of pedigree in college as well. And what do you think it is? Every coach is trying to navigate the transfer portal, and the learning curve is the same for pretty much everybody. It's this new thing. There's thousands of players available every single year. Guys can enter and leave at the timing is changing with grad students. It's basically the entire year. Like, how has that adjustment over the last couple of years really been in terms of figuring out how to navigate this really brand new space in college sports? And as a program that has seemed to have a lot of success, at least this go round, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I mean, I never would have thought that we would have been in this position, right? At, being in the college coaching game for almost 25 years now. Yeah. I never would have thought we'd be operating like this, but we are. And so we wanted to make sure that, we dove headfirst in, and, where you used to in the past have a lot of time to develop relationships. It's more like speed dating now, so you have to speed up the process of really getting to know kids, getting to know their circle. But, I think we've done a really good job of identifying kids who fit what we're about. And just speeding the process up. And we have a great product to sell here at USF and with a lot of tradition, and that's helped us as well. So, we're going to continue to evolve, in the transfer market and the transfer game and the portal process. But we also want to make sure that, we're continuing to cultivate those relationships with the high school level kids. And because I do think you can get kids now who are maybe above the level of what you used to be able to get in the high school recruiting class. So we're trying to have a really good mix of the two.
Well, San Francisco's rich history and recent success have made them a very desirable mid-major program. What are the next steps to get this team to be a perennial NCAA darling? We will talk about that soon. But first, today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate and get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. You San Francisco folks might want to keep betting on those Giants who are having a very successful season with Patrick Bailey behind the dish. Folks, do not miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, I want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or your first watch of the day. Again, shout out to all those everyday listeners as well. We got more fantastic stuff coming up on the show. We'll talk about the ACC SEC showdown and the matchups that we got coming out for that next week. Isaac and I will be back to discuss the 10 biggest storylines of the college basketball year last year and how we expect those to continue to play out going forward. You mentioned the rich history at USF, and I do want to get into that a little bit, but also like the recent history is pretty darn good as well. I mean, we're talking about a program that has won 20 or more games in every full season since 2016. And I think, it's a program that is going a little bit under the radar. And I think there are some challenges of being in the WCC and not being named Gonzaga and St. Mary's that I think can contribute to that a little bit. But this is a program that since Kyle Smith took over, again, 20 wins every full season. And Kyle Smith, he moves on to Washington State, gets himself a Power 5 job. Todd Golden takes over, has a ton of success, leads this team to an NCAA tournament appearance for the first time in nearly 20 years. And then he gets a very lucrative, appealing job in Gainesville with Florida. And so for you, taking over a program that has had two coaches recently who obviously have had a ton of success, not just at San Francisco, but moving forward, like what does it mean for you to be kind of tasked with taking over after that? And I know you didn't get to work with Kyle at San Francisco, although you coached against him, but is there anything you were able to learn from him and Todd kind of as you get into this position to take over this program?
Yeah, I mean, number one, guys who have achieved at a really high level. Mm-hmm. I always try to take as much as I can from guys like that and have tremendous respect. Obviously worked with Todd, mm-hmm. did not work with Kyle, but did coach against him when I was at the University of San Diego. And guys who did it the right way. You know, I don't think they skipped any steps in terms of building programs. And we're trying to follow in that same footstep. And this is a place, as you said, that has tremendous tradition, great support. The administration on down has been awesome since, me taking over as head coach here. And I think it's still a place that, we've tasted success. I think we can do a lot more, and that's a goal for myself and our staff and our program is we want to continue to elevate the program and be one of those teams that people know on a national level. And we're not scared to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. What are those next steps? Because I think that it feels to me like this program is right on the cusp of being there. Again, the history is magnificent. NCAA championships, Bill Russell, one of the greatest players of all time. And the recent history, again, has been good lately, but only one tournament appearance out of there. I assume that the next steps are to be more consistently in the NCAA tournament. You're in this city that has a love of basketball, a rich history of basketball, a current success in basketball at the NBA level. So what are those kind of next things to really continue to elevate that program to get to that point where there is a little bit more national recognition and it isn't as surprising to see them in the NCAA tournament? Because I think this team has had NCAA tournament caliber rosters, and I know it's hard to break through, but it feels like kind of right on the edge there.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think number one, we've struggled maybe a little bit with consistency. Mm-hmm. We've had some really good wins, and then we've had some dips. And I think for us to kind of be in that conversation year in, year out, we just need to be a little bit more consistent. I think from an outside perspective, our administration has put a lot of resources into us trying to make that next step. We're opening a brand new practice facility here in about a month. the way that we travel, the way that we're kind of the money that is put into the program. We've really made a jump in that department. And I think all that stuff is important. You want to be able to compete with the Gonzagas and the St. Mary's and the teams who are in top 25 year in, year out in terms of what your resources look like. And I think we are thankfully, and I'm very grateful for our administration and our athletic director for continuing to kind of push the needle forward in those areas, because those are important.
You mentioned wanting to continue to recruit high school talent as well, and not kind of forgetting about that when navigating the transfer portal, and certainly very recent success for USF in terms of finding guards out of high school. I know Khalil Shabazz technically didn't come out of high school. He came out of a non-Division I level, but was a really unheralded prospect before he got to San Francisco. Same with Jamari Bouye, guys that I know you had a chance to work with a little bit. And I'm curious, like, how do you continue to kind of develop and show off that reputation of developing these guards from guys who weren't heralded out of high school to, Bouye is an NBA player and Shabazz was one of the most successful mid-major point guards in the country. Like, how do you continue to do that and continue to find those kind of under the radar gems? Because I think that's such a key part of recruiting, even in the transfer portal era, is to find guys that maybe aren't getting a lot of attention and turn them into players like that.
Yeah, I think number one is identifying players that fit what you're about. Mm-hmm. And Khalil and Jamari had chances to be faces of the program here because they really fit what USF was about. They fit the program from a basketball standpoint, but they really meshed and ingrained themselves in the university as a whole. And I think we've continued to do that. Ryan Beasley's joining our program. He was a Northern California Player of the Year. He was a first-team All-State guy, a guy who we did beat out some Power 5 schools for. Mm-hmm. And I think he will fall right into the line of those guys as he kind of learns and progresses. But he has tremendous upside and a lot of potential to be that next guard kind of in the mold of those guys. So we're excited about him. And we signed a Chinese player, mm-hmm. Barry Wang, who's playing in the under-19 World Championships right now. They actually played the U.S. this morning, but he had 13 against the U.S. today. He had 21 against Spain yesterday. So he's another high school player who we're really excited about and think can have a really big impact on our program going forward.
Oh, I wanted to ask a little bit about NIL as well and the impact that has had, because again, we talked a lot about the transfer portal. We're going to talk about conference realignment, which is kind of the other big conversation around college athletics right now. And NIL, of course, factors in as well. And certainly you kind of hear the stories of the really big name athletes and these millions of dollars that are being thrown around. And we know that that's a relatively small percentage of student athletes who are getting that kind of commitment. But for a program like USF, who obviously is bringing in high level talent, like how do you navigate the NIL space? And I know, that there's other people outside of you who contribute to this factor, mm-hmm. but I'm curious just how you have seen that change for your program in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a brand new kind of world that we're living in. I think the programs that figure it out and kind of move forward are the ones that are going to have a chance to stay competitive and not get passed by. And that was the biggest thing for us. We just wanted to make sure that we were able to stay competitive in the recruiting game. And mm-hmm. Thankfully, as most universities do, or if they don't, they're in the process of getting them set up. But we do have a collective here at USF, the Hilltop Club, who has done a tremendous job of kind of getting our feet on the ground and getting us up and running. And it's allowed us to stay competitive, and I think, who knows what the future holds from an NIL, landscape. I anticipate that the NCAA will probably get involved a little bit more, but we're trying to operate as best we can in the landscape and stay competitive with the rest of the conference and the rest of the country.
Well, we know BYU is out the door, but what does Coach Gerlufsen think about conference realignment and the future of the WCC? Coming up right after this. Wanted to ask about the coaches that you coach against in the WCC, because one of the things that has always fascinated me, especially lately, about the WCC is there's this seems like a big disparity in the types of coaches or the stories of each of the coaches. You obviously have two coaches who've been there forever in Randy Bennett and Mark Few, who are, Mark Few is a future Hall of Famer. Randy Bennett is a very underrated longtime head coach. And then you have some kind of younger guys who have moved up, like Stan Johnson at LMU, Shante Leggins at UP. And then, of course, you have some older coaches who have kind of come back to the WCC level. You have Steve Lavin. You have Lorenzo Romar, of course, at Pepperdine. You have Herb Sendek at Santa Clara. And it feels like you have some like very analytically approached teams. You have some teams that are a bit more old school. It feels like a very widespread of different coaching styles in the conference. And I just wonder how that impacts you in terms of preparing for these teams, and then also kind of just learning from the various coaching styles that you get to go up against in the conference.
Yeah, number one, I think, I know you have a great appreciation for the league, but I grew up on the East Coast. So the WCC games used to be the game that you turn on late at night and kind of be half watching it as you fall asleep. And since coming to the West Coast 8 or 9 years ago, I've just been amazed in just enthused at the level of coaching in this league. And it's done nothing but get better since I've come to the West Coast. And so to give you kind of a long answer, there are no off nights.
Yeah.
You go from top to bottom in this league, and you have coaches who have achieved at the highest of high levels. You have guys who are just kind of getting their chance and breaking in, myself being one of them. But there's a tremendous differing styles across the board, but everyone is a challenge in terms of getting ready to play. And, when I first came to the West Coast, you used to be able to point out a game or two where as long as you showed up and played, you were going to win. And there are none of those nights now. And that's a credit to the schools in our conference and the coaches. It is a tremendous league from top to bottom, and one that I don't think gets enough recognition on a national landscape in terms of just the quality of coaching.
Well, I'll continue to do my best to bang the drum for the WCC. But I do want to switch to talking about realignment. Obviously, another huge talking point in college. I was going to say college basketball, but really in college football and college athletics in general over the last couple of years. We have BYU headed to the Big 12. That is a known thing, a known way that conference realignment is directly impacting the WCC. We, of course, have heard rumors about Gonzaga being involved with the Big 12. We've heard rumors about Gonzaga being involved in the Big East in the past. Like they've been in rumors around conference realignment for at least 5 years because they were rumored to go to the Mountain West about that long ago. So this has continued to happen with them. We've seen big moves like USC and UCLA and potential future moves and conversation about San Diego State for seemingly months and months and months now. And I wonder just how much attention you give those conversations, like how much it's on the radar for you, or is it kind of just, hey, we'll prepare for who's in our league and we'll just kind of wait and see what happens after that?
I try to stay out of all that stuff because there's so many reports that come out and one of the assistants will come in the office and say, hey, did you see this about Gonzaga or did you see this about San Diego State? And probably 3 out of 4 times it's not true, what's reported on. And so, I will say this, Gonzaga being in the West Coast Conference is good for the University of San Francisco, and it's good for the rest of the conference. And, I definitely do not want to see them go anywhere. I love the challenge of having the opportunity to play the Zags and Coach Few twice or 3 times in a year. And it's good for our league. And so I'm trying to keep my fingers crossed and selfishly hope that they stay in the WCC for the greater good of our league, and we'll kind of take it day by day as it comes. Sure. But, as I said, we specifically don't want them going anywhere.
What about BYU? Because they obviously weren't, we're only in the conference for about a decade or so. And certainly I think had hopes of having a bit more success in terms of winning conference championships, but a program that obviously has a ton of history, a ton of success, a huge fan base, a huge student population, all of that. And now they're headed to the Big 12. Certainly makes sense for them from a football perspective to be back in a power conference or to be in a power conference. But obviously a program that had a fair amount of success here and seems like a team that's going to be hard to replace in the WCC just in terms of what they brought that was unique compared to other schools that were in the conference.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see kind of what their transition looks like, right? Going from the WCC to the Big 12. I know they have really good resources. Mark Pope's a really good coach. really good person, and I anticipate them, figuring it out and achieving at a high level over the next few years. But yeah, it's going to be a hit for our league with them departing. But, if you look at where they finished in the league, it's not like we're losing a team that has been a perennial, one or two team in the league, but they've done a lot in terms of just providing a really good level of opponent. And, we'll see what the league decides to do here moving forward, whether we add another school or whether we keep it at the point that we're at right now.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to ask too. I think it's safe to assume that head coaches don't have much of any say of decisions like this, but I'm curious, just like, if it's something, I know you said you kind of try to stay out of it, but if it's something where you are paying attention to schools, in other local conferences like the WAC or anywhere else that Big West that may end up being in the conference, or if it's kind of like, hey, when we hear something, we'll start to prepare from that. But at this point, it's kind of just wait and see.
Yeah, that's kind of the attitude I'm taking. I think, if I was choosing who to add to the league, I don't have a specific school, but I would want to add someone that's going to have a chance to elevate our profile, and I think that's probably the most basic way to put it. Not just add a team to add a team that's going to have a chance to really elevate our league as a whole. Because I want to see the league continue to grow and be recognized on a national landscape, as I said earlier.
Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. I really appreciate your insight, your expertise. Really looking forward to watching the San Francisco team next year, and I will definitely be nervous for every time that they're playing the Zags, because I think this is a program that's going to make some noise next year. Thanks again.
I appreciate it, Andy. Good to catch up with you.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us today. Thank you again to Coach Chris Gerlufsen for joining us on the show today, giving us some nice insight into San Francisco and the world of being a Division I head coach. We got more fantastic stuff coming your way later this week. Of course, we'll talk that ACC, SEC showdown. We'll talk about the biggest storylines in college basketball. We will keep you up to date on everything going on in the transfer portal and some more recap of the NBA draft as well. Thank you all for listening. And of course, as always, peace out.